Pisces, welcome to your March 2020 Astro Update. It's Raina here, and wow, this seems like this is going to be a busy month. So I'm actually recording this on Valentine's Day, which is February 14th. I was like going to say Aquarius, but it's in this sign of Aquarius. But in just a couple of days, there's going to be a Mercury retrograde. And this Mercury retrograde is at 12 degrees of Pisces. So this is in your sign and the first house. This reading is for Pisces Sun and Pisces Rising. It's a general reading for Pisces because your degree of sun or rising matters in how these will play out, how these transits will play out in the time that I'm talking about. But it still can function in a general way and be and resonate with a lot of people regardless. And so when you have Mercury retrograde in the first house, you may be doing a lot of thinking about who you are, who you pretend to be, but it's not really about who you pretend to be, but how others perceive you by how you present yourself. Now, your 10th house is your reputation, your first house is your image. So it can be more on the superficial side sometimes, so like how you look. But I think that it's more about yourself, like how you feel about you. And when Mercury goes retrograde, you're kind of rethinking some things. You may be rethinking your hairstyle, and it might not be that deep. But Mercury is going to go into your 12th house. And the reason that I'm bringing up a transit from February is because many of you may be listening during this time. And so for the rest of February, Mercury is going to be in Pisces. And the sun goes into Pisces on the 18th of February, a couple days after the Mercury retrograde. So that's kind of interesting. And so obviously as the month of March begins, the sun is still in Pisces in that first house. And on the 4th, Mercury dips back into your 12th house in Aquarius. Now, having the sun in your sign is always like a great feeling. At least I've experienced it that way. It's like feeling like you're at home, feeling like you're really who you are. I wonder if there are ever times when people don't like their solar return or don't like the period around it when the sun is in their sign. I've never experienced that myself. It's always a buoyant time, I feel. But Mercury is now in the 12th house. Now you rule the 12th house, so it's still going to feel kind of Piscean. It's going to be influenced by being in the 12th house, but Mercury is retrograde and in the 12th. So there's a lot of internal dialogue, to put it mildly. And it's not going to be a time of I don't think it's going to be a time of great clarity in terms of your mindset. You may be kind of really indecisive about certain things. You may feel like you have to find closure about something. And therefore, and in general for everybody, it's always said, don't, start something new, don't sign contracts, don't travel and things like that, serious travel. Obviously, you can't put your life on hold if there are certain things that come up that force you to take action. But if you have an important decision and you don't have to make it at that time, it might be a good idea, because Mercury in the 12th house may have you muddled, may have your thinking muddled. You may be very emotional in an irrational kind of way. I don't know if you can be ever emotionally rational. But the 12th house is the house of past lives, of, karma in general, karmic connections that we have with others. And it can be the house of self-undoing, the house of karma. And so you may be like kind of connecting the dots. Why do I always do X, Y, and Z? It might be relationship oriented. Why do I always push away people that I love in one form or the other? Where does this, how can I trace this back? And the 4th house is a house of childhood. The 12th house can be past lives. Maybe you're going to do, oh my gosh, if there was ever a time to do a hypnotic regression, an Akashic reading, I can't think of a better time, because it's just so much what this is about. And especially if you have certain self-defeating patterns and you can't seem to get beyond them by traditional methods, you might find that you need to really get to the root cause of it so that you can fully purge it. But something about how you see yourself comes into question, and you're searching deeply for answers during this Mercury retrograde, especially when Mercury goes into that 12th house on the 4th. On the same day, Venus goes into Taurus. That's in your 3rd house, and Venus in the 3rd is good for harmony with your siblings, harmony with neighbors. There can even be money made through writing projects, through teaching, or through internet. The 11th house, it really bothers me when there are multiple houses for something. And the 11th house was the house I heard was the internet. And then I heard, well, the 3rd house too, because it's about communication. But media-related things can go well. And, but even like artistic projects that have kind of a, with the written word especially, might be awesome. Or even spoken word, like, performance poetry, which I used to be into quite a bit. On the 9th, Mercury goes direct finally, and this is at 28 degrees of Aquarius in the 12th house. So the soul searching, but with that rational bent of trying to make sense of things, that can come to an end at this time. And very interesting, because on the same day we have a full moon at 19 degrees of Virgo in the 7th house, which is the house of partnership. Virgo is your opposite sign. So, full moon, what does that mean? It can mean many things. It depends on the health of your relationship. If you have a relationship on life support, maybe you finally have the courage to end it because you're getting signs. And who knows, maybe the Mercury direct was that rumination. Because in some cases, you may have felt about yourself that you were lost in that relationship. when you have a full moon, the sun, which of course is in Pisces, is going to be at the same degree opposing that moon. So it's going to be in the first house. So the sun in the first house opposing the full moon is really about honoring yourself. You may see the other and see, what they need, or see who they really are. That can bring that full realization at the full moon of who somebody really is. Like you see them in a new light, and then you honor yourself. However, the full moon is a culmination. This could be realizing your true love for somebody. Sometimes people are in a committed relationship, but they still can't commit to the nth degree because they fear the loss of freedom or what have you, and you may just say, I'm all in. If there is an ending, maybe it's an ending of a partnership with somebody that you were in business with, or who knows, so you're dissolving a partnership. On the 16th, Mercury is back into your first house in Pisces. So it only goes into the 12th for about 12 days. And then it's back in your first house. So moving forward in the first. A few days later, the sun goes into Aries, and it's the astrological new year. This is a time for everybody to plant seeds. In your case, this is the second house, so this where this new moon is occurring. So thinking about, perhaps financial goals, maybe new income streams. How can I bring money into my life in various ways? Active ways, passive ways, and planting seeds of intention, coming up with ideas, but really giving them that sense of power, empowering them to really germinate. But the thing about this, even though this is a power period because it's, an equinox time. However, it's not the new moon in Aries, which is a few days later, and which I will get to in a minute. And even, during this period, planting seeds can mean that they blossom later this year. But it's all about the ideas first. And sometimes with Pisces, you have a tendency to see things as already etched in stone. I'm not saying all Pisces, but this is just kind of like, I think part of the nature of Pisces, to think of things as preordained. And being able to shift out of that into a more active type of self-empowerment, I think, can make all the difference in making your dreams come true. So that's happening, and then on the 21st, which is just 2 days later, Saturn goes into Aquarius. This is huge because this is going to be impacting all of us for the next few years until 2023. I have a whole video on this for your sign, so check out my playlist on Saturn in Aquarius. But this is going to be in that 12th house, and Saturn is pretty serious, and the 12th house is pretty serious. So if you are the kind of person to read a lot of astrology online, or you have books, or you watch people on YouTube or what have you, some people say dark night of the soul. Well, that's because a lot of people look at Saturn in just this almost like a punishing type of a way, like an angry parent, you know. Saturn is strict, but Saturn is about excellence and efficiency. I mean, even saying excellence, it doesn't sound right. I would say more about organization and discipline. And perhaps Saturn feels like if you take care of the details, then the excellence will come of its own accord. But so the 12th house, in terms of discipline, this is helpful in any area where you feel like you have a self-destructive pattern, whether it's an addiction, whether it's an emotional issue that tends to, keep you from living your best life. Anything that like a self-defeating pattern is the best overall term to use. Saturn can maybe create structure for you. The 12th house is about not having structure. But the best example, or the easiest one to think of, is a spiritual practice. And a lot of times you will hear people say to those who complain about, feeling discouraged with where they're at in life, or maybe they feel like lonely and they want a relationship, people will say, you should really meditate. You should really practice yoga and do things like this, because they feel like that will open up the person to a lot of positive energy flow. And then life will just automatically improve because of that. And yes, I agree with that, but I also think that it can help to shift one's attitude to a more positive place. But I also think that a spiritual practice can help to clarify, distill one's thoughts so that the person isn't necessarily looking for the same thing that they were looking for before. Because, when I hear these people, some of them are famous gurus now that talk about their spiritual awakening. A lot of times the awakening wasn't some dramatic increase in their life. They may have been in a very humble place, but they felt this immense bliss because they were freed from the tyranny of their, mundane mind that was just telling them all these lies about what life was about and what they should be doing and stuff like that. So it's kind of a weird thing. It's like, yes, of course, you can free yourself to attract more good into your life, but also it's almost like this idea of, Byron Katie has a book called Loving What Is. And Byron Katie is a spiritual teacher who had an awakening herself that she talks about. But she has a book called Loving What Is, meaning that, it's not about some kind of specific event that can make you finally be happy, but you are just happy because you're in this state of bliss where everything makes you happy. And you're not discriminating and saying, oh, I don't like that, so who cares about that? I'm still waiting for this to happen. And so that this can be a way through certain disciplines, and we'd say spiritual disciplines, where you can kind of like, and that's the other thing too, is that Saturn kind of pares things down. And even though this is the 12th house, so it's not material, it could still influence you, maybe with your spiritual life in mind, maybe to cut out some of the things that are in your life, maybe like simplify your life materially. Because the 12th house is like the monastery or the hermitage. And with Saturn there, you may crave that sparse living style because it makes everything so simple, and because of that you can spend more time in contemplation. You may just crave solitude more, and it won't be like hiding out or anything like that, or escape. It will be because you want to become stronger, you want to become more self-reliant. On the 24th, we have the new moon at 4 degrees of Aries. Number 4, we're seeing some of these new moons at 4 degrees. This is a 4 universal year. So 4 is the number of foundation, also ruled by Saturn, not surprisingly. I find it interesting that Saturn transit, or the entrance into Aquarius, is sandwiched in between the sun going into Aries, the equinox power period, and the new moon in Aries power period. Remember, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so it's the new year period. So new moon in Aries in your second house, financial, possible influences, maybe new endeavors in this area. And then on the 30th, Mars goes into Aquarius. So Mars goes into your 12th house. Oh, that should be interesting because Mars is very active and the 12th house is very passive. Hatha yoga, baby. That's the best way. Maybe your ambitions are even in the area of spirituality. When somebody has Mars in their natal 12th house, they can be a healer. A spiritual healer, I mean. And so this may be something that you want to inquire about, maybe as a future profession. So don't talk yourself out of these things. Just explore them. You never know where life is going to take you. Remember that Neptune is in your sign, Pisces. So you are, not, to say the least, you're already very, very intuitive. But this may be the time in your soul's journey where you need to share your gifts with the world. So definitely, there's no harm in exploring these things at the very least. So in any case, happy birthday to all of you Pisces. Thank you for listening. If you'd like a private reading, I do natal chart interpretations looking at the upcoming year for the person who has just had their solar return, and also for somebody who is a rising sign with this, Pisces rising. I would definitely pull up your natal chart too. So my website is rainamoonastrology.com. The link is below. Take care. Bye.